One of the best things about last year's Fix Fest, without a doubt, and I will accept no humbleosity on the part of our guest today, was when Natalie Moores had, I think it was about 10 or 11 copywriters on stage at once and had them create live in person an actual poem about Fix Fest in a very brilliantly meta way that we like at the Fix, but also in it was great to see like people's different thought processes and what have you. So it was impossible for us not to invite Natalie back for this year's Fix Fest to do another, in brackets, TBC piece of poetry madness. Welcome to The Fix. Sit down with copywriting experts Nick O'Connor and Glenn Fisher as they review, discuss and improve real-world copy sent in by you. This is The Fix. It is my pleasure to welcome Natalie, who has been a long-standing friend in the industry now, I would say. She seems to have been around at each stage of my career in the industry. I don't know how, and I don't know why. It's because you lived in Amsterdam, and I just think that's the coolest thing in the world. That's when I met you and Jess, when you were working there. But anyway, enough of my ramble. I've got with me the brilliant Natalie Moores. Hello, Natalie.
Hello, Glenn. Thanks for having me on again.
I don't know in my constant tangents there whether I said that we've invited you back, and there will be some poetry. You will be our in-house poet, and we will tell people more about that in due course once we've fully figured it out. Is the answer. But today I wanted to take the chance to speak to you about all things AI and to get your take as we head towards Fix Fest on July 3rd. And if people haven't got a ticket yet, make sure you get your ticket. You run a successful marketing company. You are the copywriting force behind that company, along with Jess, who is the brains. I'll stand up for Jess.
Shout out, Jess.
How is AI affecting Macklemore right now? What's your take on it as you see things at the moment?
I would say my take at the moment is shifting on an almost, weekly, if not daily basis. And I think that's probably exactly how most people are feeling. I think like everyone, it feels as though this conversation has been thrust upon us all of a sudden in a way that feels quite unignorable. But what I'm reading and learning is actually how many kind of increments. It's like, I always think of it like, when Ed Sheeran made it into the big time, and it turned out he'd done like 364 gigs in a year or so. He'd basically done a gig nearly every single day and nobody had known who he was. And then he finally tipped it into the mainstream. And I think it's like this, where there's been obviously these kind of little incremental steps going on, but all of a sudden it feels like it's sort of come out of nowhere. And I think because of that, I initially, as I think a lot of creatives are, I felt really resistant to it. I put an absolute blocker on it. I was like, I will never open ChatGPT on my web browser, because if I, indulge it, then I am sort of co-creating it essentially, which I still think is kind of a bit true. Then I sort of, nervous system response, calm down. And I something that was a really amazingly useful resource actually was the ever brilliant Zoe Skayman's sort of deck that she released, where she actually walked through how to use it and what to use it for and what not to use it for. So I then thought, right, okay, if I'm going to feel confident that I have a future in this industry, I actually can't bury my head in the sand around it. So I've played with it. We're in conversations all the time, Jess and I, about how we might or might not bring it into our process. And I think transparency is going to be absolutely crucial in that. We do brand naming, for example, And we had a really interesting client once where they essentially, just before the naming presentation where we were going to share our options, they said, oh, by the way, we've put the brief, that you'd written into ChatGPT. So if any of those options are the same, then, we're not going to pay you for the work. And I was like, okay, that's a really nice approach to have to someone you've, started a professional work B2B relationship with, but cool, like back myself. And
just to clarify on that, you said about the brief. Was it the brief they'd given you or the brief you'd written for the whole thing?
I'd written.
You'd written it. So,
yeah.
Right. Okay. So the actual prompt, if you like, you had actually given them, yet they were going to go, if this comes up, which is interesting because I think as people learn more and more about how AI can be used and the advantages of it, one of the things is going to be it's the prompts that are the key to the whole kind of thing. And it's interesting there that's just gone, oh yeah, we'll ignore that bit, and it's just the output, which I think
clients have to think about. They can be quite short-sighted in that way, and this is where I think for creatives it's going to be the most interesting space to play in, because everything is inputs and outputs, right? Even if you do, we do workshop facilitation, and all of that is analog. None of that is digital. It's in person, people in a room. But the inputs into that workshop, what people are putting into it, are entirely going to drive whatever comes out of it. So I feel like with that, the prompt conversation is interesting, but it is a mirror for everything. Everything is inputs and outputs. And I feel like we've launched an email series called Future Moves, and we've been interviewing people on AI. Keeps coming up again and again and again, obviously. And Rishi Dastadar, who we interviewed for it, he kind of made the point that, which I think is really true, it's all of this feels like it is going to create market squeeze. It is going to get rid of some jobs, but there's going to be a space at the top where people are still going to want craft. They're going to want to not do it themselves. And even with something like an AI tool, you still need to put time and effort into getting something out of it at the moment. And so it's going to be like almost the premium. And that's probably an invitation for any of us who think we're good at what we do to rise to that challenge. So that's where I'm kind of trying to see it at the moment. And I'm really trying to see the optimism and the hopefulness and the opportunity in it. But it is scary. And I think it feels really sad for kind of junior copywriters coming into the game now. That's where I kind of feel probably the most for.
Well, yeah, I guess it's one of those things, and we've got no. The biggest challenge for me when it comes to AI, I think, generally, is that I am a man who likes to reach a conclusion or be like, there's the takeaway that we learn from that, that's right or wrong, or you should do this or you shouldn't do that, only out of a desire to be helpful and not kind of leave something kind of like, what if kind of thing. I don't think you can do that right now. We're learning, we're figuring out, and the whole industry is doing that. Part of the reason we chose to theme up, if you like, for this year's Fix Fest, rather than it be the typical shambolic, rambling nonsense that we are famous for, and it will be all of those things, but there's so much crap out there. And when I say we, I mean the copywriting community are often the source of that crap. There's a lot of people who probably should know better, who are using those quick, rush ahead wins to kind of get people to sign up for things and what have you. And they are creating this image, perhaps. Well, this is my thought. I'll be interested to see what you think about it, Nat. But they create that image of, all right, yeah, it can do this, it can do this, it can do this. It will replace copywriters. Copywriters, all of us being somewhere insecure inside of us and kind of going, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't stand up to that anyway. But it creates this world where the client then goes, all right, well, it can do that, can it? All right, well, why do I need you kind of thing? And I guess it reminds certainly for me, it reminds me as a copywriter that we have to evidence why we are worth having beyond just the words, as that, because a chat GBT will just create the words in the ultimate kind of, if you only use it for that. And there are other uses for AI and chat GBT, which I keep saying chat GBT.
Yeah.
PT anyway, for that thing. There are other uses for it that are all cool, but that idea that we are more than just the words, we are more than just that output. It's almost incumbent on us to kind of remind the industry that's why you need to step up. That's why you need to be the better, the more thoughtful copywriter, the research harder, do better work, do more work, kind of thing. And I think junior copywriters particularly will go, oh God, I haven't got to that point yet. I can't separate myself like that. I'm just doing the words to get paid. But I think that's wrong for any junior copywriter to think that. They just need to identify the fact that they're not just the words. ChatGPT can do just the words. It's all of the other stuff that as a copywriter you need to be doing.
Yeah, I think there's two really funny points about what you just said. I think the thing. So I was at a talk last week where they talked about we're entering the era of the expert. Like personal brands are being more kind of amplified and raised because people trust people over institutions. But the question is, do people trust people over machines? And this is what's going to play out, I think. And I think what you mentioned there is absolutely correct in that we need to not just produce the output and hand it over. I think it's about showcasing the expertise, because ultimately what the client is hiring you for, yes, is the word, the brand name, the story, the narrative, the web copy, the leaflet copy, whatever it is. But they're also putting their trust in you that this is the right message. This is the right name. These are the right words. Because ultimately, if they just interact with a machine, if they trust that whatever the machine tells them is right, then there's probably no case for it. But if they get those words and they go, well, I'm not the right person, we need these smart CEOs and people who are, know where their strengths lie and know where their limitations lie. And for them to go, well, I don't know whether this is right, but if you make this for me and give it to me and tell me it's right, then I will trust that it will get me what I need. So I think there's an expertise thing. And then I think it does come down to that trust piece, because my biggest fear, and I keep using this phrase, which Jess tells me is crap, but I quite like it. And it's the AI being a tool. And so treating it as a tool and not letting it make a tool out of you. And that's my little soundbite that I will go on the ship of, because it is that thing of going, I think about like random anecdote, but bear with me. My dad he literally was a police officer in Manchester. So he knew every road, every side alley, every building, how to get from A to B everywhere in Manchester, like the back of his hand for decades. As soon as sat-navs came into being, he started using the sat-nav because it was easier to tell him where the roadworks are or whatever. And now he doesn't trust himself to get himself from A to B as much as he would trust the sat-nav to tell him. And that's where I feel like the real point is that we need to dig in and try and push against. It's not that these things won't be useful. It's not that these things won't be useful to us as well as the clients. It's not that they won't continue to exist and grow and thrive and get better. It's that, it's the positioning of it. And I think the more we can keep us as the experts in the top position, whatever we use underneath that to power that, fine, rather than go just because it's a robot, it must mean that it knows more than we do.
Yeah. So of course, because I'm an idiot, I am going to first of all say I'm disappointed that your dad analogy didn't end with him being stuck currently in a Trafford Centre car park because the sat-nav's broke and he don't know how to get out anymore. But that it reminds me, we were literally, I don't know, we were going to B&Q or something the other day. I don't know why we would be using the sat-nav for B&Q. We were going somewhere where we would just put it in the sat-nav, as you do. You use this tool that you've got. But as we were driving up Crooks High Street, it said, go this way, like down the ridiculous hills, down to like Hillsborough kind of thing. And we just went, oh no, we should go that way because it's a easier drive. It's nicer. You don't have to go through all of that stuff. And it's that kind of same thing where it's great to have it as a tool, and to lead to have that support, that suggestion, that second eye, that you could do the whole kind of editing argument, being able to like go through stuff and go, oh, I missed that. I always get you and yours and you're wrong kind of thing. It could maybe check that for me. In the same way, anybody who says they're totally against AI, and I probably might have put myself in that maybe a year or so ago kind of thing. I go on Word and I can see little red lines underneath my copy that I'm looking at and editing and working on today, and little blue lines and all this kind of stuff. I rely on that to do my stuff. That is just a form of AI, essentially, where it's telling me the right thing. So there's always support there, and you can use it as a tool. But yeah, you don't want to be a tool yourself.
Exactly.
I'm trying to put your saying into action now.
Yes.
Start as a can. Maybe this could be a T-shirt for FixFest.
Yes, don't let AI make a tool out of you. TM and more. Exactly. I think the biggest thing that, because I'm the same with Grammarly, by the way. I am obsessed with Grammarly. Like, that has been so useful to me. You know, I did an English literature degree. I did a master's in creative writing. I've been taught how to use semicolons. Like, I know where an apostrophe goes. But when you are doing things at pace and something can support your, creative flow and get you to somewhere which is like, you're not proofreading it 10 times because, you can do it once because you've got Grammarly, whatever. Great. Like, love it. But I think it's this fear feeding the machine, right? I think this is where we, again, need to just like take a step back and sense check. And another one of our Future Moves interviews, we spoke to Alex Dunn, who is kind of ethical tech expert. She spent years like making sure that the people building these kind of models are being held accountable to what they are building and how they are building it. And she made this point around, if you make marketer, this thing needs to be fed. It's a very hungry beast, isn't it? The AI machine. It needs to be fed, otherwise it can't exist. And it's like Dracula, like coming back to life after whatever. Silly metaphor. And basically,
go with it.
Yeah, the best way that you can get marketers to feed into this machine, feed it, is to make them scared. Is to make them scared that if they don't use it, they'll lose their job. If they do lose it, they'll lose their jobs anyway. And that fear makes you start playing with it, and then you are technically inputting it. I heard a thing have you seen this thing on LinkedIn where they're asking you as an expert to answer a certain question? They'll say like, pose a question, and they'll go, right, you have the opportunity to input an answer to this question. It'll be something to do with copywriting. Apparently that is AI making you essentially answer the questions so that the AI can then answer the questions for free and not, it. And again, it's not, none of this is being framed in that way. And so again, I think it comes back again to inputs and outputs, but it's like, what are we feeding it with? What are we comfortable to feed it with? Something to do with bias as well, I think is really interesting, in terms of what's being built. Something that can be a really useful thing is if we write something and then we put it in and make it challenge us on our own unconscious bias and go, what have I missed here? Like gender, racial bias, like anything, get it to pick up on things that we might not be aware of. But equally, that goes the other way, and these things are being built with inherent biases. So again, if we don't challenge that and push back on it and actually go, well, hold on a second, that's being, presented to me in a lens that doesn't feel quite right. It's being conscious. Maybe this is the whole point of all of it, is about yes.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's one of those things where you talk about bias, and another bias, the confirmation bias, where it's kind of, the more you talk about something, the more it goes on and what have you. And I feel like we're in a little bit of that generally at the moment. But I think that's probably because it does feel like a a turning point. It feels like something that is a significant change. It doesn't feel like the mini disc or the kind of, or Blu-ray. But then I'm now desperately, my brain's doing a side analogy story to work out if I can like trace it to my experience of DVDs versus Blu-rays. But at the same, it feels like something significant. It feels like, as you were saying at the outset, it's something that's been there, bubbling, and kind of, oh yeah, they're talking about it. Oh, she's talking about it. He's mentioned it. That seems a thing, and that now it's like building and building and building and building, and now it's at a really like interesting point. A lot of the people who would have just completely ignored it are kind of going, "All right, okay, yeah, that's interesting," but it feels like Again, I'm trying to conclude, but I can't. It just feels like, something's tipped over here where this will be a thing. I said to Ruth the other day, I'm just going to buy stocks in AI because it's not going away. Like, it's going to be a thing. How that will look, we don't know. But I guess this is the much broader and much bigger than me, certainly, and much bigger than the fix, but the broader story out there in the big wide world about how you control it, how you use it, what you put in, as you say, about things like bias and what have you. It feels like it's a time for me to quote my own saying that I'm developing, which is shit in, shit out. But it's like, if you only put that in, then you're only going to get crap out. And if only a certain type of person with a certain view is putting stuff in, then you're only going to get that view out. It's going to be like a giant, awful, autonomous Twitter beast thing. That is so all of these things are unknown. Do you just move to the hills and ignore it? That feels like wrong. That's like kind of people say about like I'm kind of thinking of like cash and you paying for things online and tapping your phone and what have you. And we've seen the iterations go from like, it's just something, it just changes. Like, technology gets a bit easier to use, like, apart from tea bags, which no one has like found a better way of doing a tea. They try to change the shape, but otherwise that's kind of peak technology. But like, it feels like it's just something that naturally evolves and you go, all right, okay, let me understand the best way to use that. I think that's kind of where I am in the moment, kind of figuring that out. And it sounds like you're in the same place.
Yeah, I think it's such a complex, it's very complex. It's obviously nuanced. It feels very emotional because it feels like, and this is where you do have to push against the news cycle as well, because, you know, there have been so many new waves of things that have happened that where the media has latched onto it, and in order to get clicks or sell papers or get eyeballs, they'll go, this will be the end of blank as we know it. Like, you know, and when has that ever played out in the way that it is as binary as that? And I totally see your point. This is different in the sense that people compare it to the mobile phone, you know, the launch of the mobile phone, the launch of the internet, and they were like culturally, you know, they basically did transform the way that we exist and the way that we exist with one another. But this as a sort of entity of potential autonomy, I get that it is different, and also it's the speed at which things are happening because it's this rate of change. So it, you know, that is all true. And there's a really interesting concept that I've been reading about, which is like there's Baptists and bootleggers, where, you know, with any wave of new technology, you've got the bootleggers who are going to basically try and jump on the bandwagon and promote it in order just to serve their own interests. So I've already seen people online, copywriters, like selling AI prompt courses and things like that. So they're obviously just like leaning so hard into it. And then there's the Baptists who are like, no, we must not, we must keep our process and our craft sacred and we must remove ourselves from it. And actually, neither of those things is useful. I think that, you know, this is going to be about kind of leaning into it or whatever in a smart way and in a way that you feel comfortable and conscious with, because ultimately it's not going to be the death of the copywriter. Like the Kindle was never the death of the book, you know, as much as it was pegged as it. And as you say, with mobile payments, that's another really great example where it's something that has gradually been more adopted over time, which I think will be the same as this. But, you know, look at all that pushback that they had when they tried to shut that ticket office at the like countryside railway stations, and people said, no, you cannot do that. We need a person there, because Doris, 87, lived in the area her whole life, does not have a debit card or doesn't have Apple Pay, and she wants to come and speak to a human being and hand over her cash that she got out at a cash point, pay for her ticket and go clubbing in town. Like, that should be...
And go to the AI fest.
Yeah, exactly. Come to Fix Fest. You know, she needs to pay for that.
She's in a prompting course, and she is like the 88-year-old hottest AI prompter in the UK.
Doris is ready to go on AI, but she will not use a debit card. She will not use contactless payments. And that is her prerogative. And so this is where I just think we need to kind of like not make too many rash decisions, try and not be too fatalistic and, you know, sort of like catastrophize it. And actually just remember that even though things are changing quickly, they're not changing irreversibly today. And so just be curious. Like, this is mine and Jess's like big word of the year is like curiosity. If you are curious about something, that brings a really positive and interesting energy to how you approach it. So I think that would be, if you're going to say like what, you didn't ask me what my word of how I was going to describe my interaction with AI, but if you were to ask me, I think I would say I'm trying to stay curious about it.
Now, there's many reasons to finish there, because we've got so much to talk about, and people will be able to come and talk to both you and me about it in July. But for those eagle-eyed viewers and listeners, we've always come back to the same thing about what makes good copywriters, and it's curiosity. And that is, as you say, you good copywriters will always be curious about what's coming along and what's happening. So you've done a wonderful job. We will leave it there for now, because the one thing we haven't spoken about, but we will speak about more, and people will be able to enjoy on the day, is how AI figures out with poetry. You and I are both into our slightly more artistic endeavors in that world, and we will be surprising people on July the 3rd with some AI-infused poetry. If you want to...
ourselves, actually, Glenn, I think, you know, this is why people come to Fix Fest, is that you will be participating in possibly the only AI poetry experiment, live social experiment.
There you go. Nat, you're a superstar. I was thinking, shall I do a thing where I ask you what's the one reason to come to Fix Fest 2? And I didn't need to, because I've got a superstar copywriter on me. It's automatic. It's just open. The sale is happening. But yeah, lovely. Well, thank you very much for your time, Nat. I can't wait to see you on July the 3rd. If people listening have not got the tickets, you can go to thefixcopywriting.com/fixfest2, or you can just find a link somewhere. Find a link. You can. It's the modern world, unless you don't want to use the internet. In which case, I can't imagine the event will bother you too much. But just come and hang out with Nat anyway. It's worth it for that. But yeah, thank you very much, Nat, and I'll see you soon.
All right, cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.
If you enjoyed The Fix and want to get access to even more good stuff, join the Fix Accelerator today. Get access to special masterclasses from Nick and me, watch expert interviews with industry legends, join live copy feedback sessions every week, and get connected to our very own private copy network. Visit thefixaccelerator.com for more information.